Welcome back to another episode of Aussie Hot Tip. Today I'm going to be showing you how I do my initial setups when I install a new radio in one of my RCs. For this example, we're going to be using the RadioLink RC6GS V2, which I unboxed a little while ago. I've got a brand new non-gyro receiver for this particular video, just to keep things nice and simple. And my donor car is the brand new Tinkorelli Radix 6. I've only just done a speed test with it, so the car's still nice and clean, and I figured this would be the perfect candidate for this video. So of course, the first thing we're going to be doing is taking the body off and of course identifying where our receiver is or where our receiver box is. So some RCs have a receiver box, some don't. This one does, and it's this little box right here, which is going to have 4 screws that I need to remove in order to access it. So that's step number 1. Once we've taken our cover off, we of course need to remove our receiver and unplug our cables, taking note of which cable is which. In this case, I've got 2 different colors here, so it's pretty easy to sort of remember which one's which. Now, a good trick here is to remember that channel 1 is for steering and channel 2 is your throttle. So 1 to turn, 2 to burn. I'm sure you've probably heard that saying somewhere before. So in this case, my servo is channel 1, so that's the yellow one there. And my white cable is my throttle. So I just need to keep a mental note of that, so when I plug it into the new receiver, they're in the right order. So here's our new receiver, and you can see that the channels are actually numbered. Now some receivers, or I would say most receivers, will have numbered channels. Some of them will actually tell you which orientation to actually have your wires. Now if they don't have an orientation for the wires, a good tip to remember is that the signal wire always faces inwards and the negative wire always faces outwards of the receiver. So it doesn't matter if your channel starts at the bottom here, channel 1, 2 and so forth, or if it starts at the top, signal wire always inwards, negative wire outwards of the receiver. It's a good little tip there. Right, so steering servo in channel 1 and ESC in channel 2. Again, either the brown or black wires to the outside of the receiver and the yellow or white wires to the inside of the receiver. Now all we need to do is bind this to our radio, and we'll be ready to put everything back together. Now before I do any binding or programming of ESCs on any of my cars, I like to make sure that the wheels are off the ground, just in case anything goes wrong and the car accidentally just decides to shoot off in either forward or reverse, and you're gonna have to go chase after it. So I've got mine on a stand, but if you don't have a fancy stand like this, you can use a box or some spare tires or anything to really prop the car off the ground. The important thing is that it doesn't really wobble or rock around, because if you do touch the throttle, if something happens, you don't want this thing to sort of move around and then you're still going to be able to shoot off. Also make sure you got enough clearance off the ground in case the tires balloon, especially with big monster trucks. If you don't have any of these things to sort of get the wheels off the ground, or if you're a bit worried, just take the wheels off. You take the wheels off, the car's not going to go anywhere. So it's just a safety precaution there, and a little bit of a hint to for young players, so that you don't hurt yourselves. So to get this thing bound up, I've got a battery plugged in here. It's not fully charged, it's just on storage charge. You don't really need a fully charged battery for this process. You just need enough power to really power the receiver and just do some calibrations, which we'll do in a second, and then you'll be pretty much ready to go. Now with this particular radio, the first thing of course we need to do is select a new model. So step number 1 is of course turn the radio on. To access the menus in this guy, you need to press both of the end buttons at the same time. So you press both of those, you get your menu here, you scroll down to model, you hit enter, and then you can see that I've got my Creighton V4 selected there. We're going to select a new model, which is that guy right there. We're going to hit enter, and we can change the name of this to whatever we want a little bit later on, but for now we're just going to have model number 2 there. That's it. And we're going to turn our radio off, because in order to bind to this receiver, this process needs to start with the radio actually switched off. So we turn that off, we leave that there for the moment. And the next thing we're going to be doing is turning our turning our receiver on, but we need to make sure that this button on the base here is actually being pressed at the same time. Now I know you can't really see it, but I will show you a close-up of it. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to have just a standard sort of hex driver here, and I'm going to push down on the button, so I'll just have a little tiny bit of pressure, and you can actually feel it click. You can actually feel the button click. So once I push down and I know that it's on, I can turn my car on. The switch is on the other side there, so I'll turn this on and you'll see that the light will actually blink green, so you can see that there. And all we need to do here is just turn our radio on, and you can see it goes solid green, which means it's now bound. And there we go. I now have my steering, and if I hold the car just quickly, there we go, I have throttle. But if you notice, it's actually going in reverse. So the wheels are actually spinning in that direction. And my throttle is not calibrated yet, so I can actually feel that it's not 100%. So the next thing we're going to be doing is, of course, calibrating the ESC. And these Hobby Wings ESCs are actually really easy to do. So I'm going to flip the car around and we'll do that real quick. Right, now in order to calibrate these ESCs, it's actually really simple. There's an additional button there next to the on and off button, just a red one. We're going to press and hold that button down whilst turning on our ESC. And you'll notice that it'll start beeping. Then it's just a matter of pressing the set button with the throttle at neutral, pulling full trigger and pressing the set button again, and then going full reverse and then pressing the set button again. And hopefully that will calibrate, and it may even put the drive going the right way. So let's give that a go and see how that works out. So first things first, we're going to hold that button down and turn our ESC on. We can let go of that and you can see that it's beeping away. We're going to leave the throttle at neutral and making sure that obviously our trims and everything are centered. We're going to press once, we're going to pull our trigger to full throttle, press again, and we're going to go full reverse on this one again and just hold it there and press, and we can release. It does its little beeps and it should be pretty much right to go. So if I just, there we go. So now the throttle's actually going the right way. I didn't have to reverse my channels or do anything crazy like that. So you can see that the throttle is actually going forward there. There we are. So, and if I brake and then go reverse, there we go. So that is now calibrated and ready to rock and roll. We can power down and we can put everything back together. So putting everything back together is pretty straightforward. All we need to do is, of course, just put our receiver back into the receiver box and tidy up our cables, and just make sure that the antenna is either fed through the receiver box. Some receiver box will have little slots for you to actually put the antenna tube through. Others, like this one here, will just basically go through the top of the lid and then come out of the antenna tube. So the original receiver was not actually stuck to the receiver box. It was just kind of loose in there. I don't have too much of an issue with that, but I do prefer if there is a little bit of double-sided tape on the receiver, just to stop it sort of getting banged around inside the receiver box. So in this case, I'm actually going to stick mine to the side of the receiver box, tidy up my cables, feed my antenna through, and put everything back together. So now we come to the last step of setting up our car, and that is to set up the endpoints for our steering. We've already calibrated our ESC, so the ESC knows where full throttle is, neutral and reverse. But now we need to also set up our steering servo. Now I have done a video similar to this, which was how to adjust steering dual rates on your ready to run car. So you can check out the card that I'm going to pop up the top there, or check out the video description down below when you're ready to check out that video if you have a ready to run radio and you want to know how to set up your dual rates. Essentially, we're going to be doing the exact same thing here, but we can actually set the independent endpoints of our steering for both left and right. Because this is a computerized radio, we have the ability to do that, and it actually is a little bit better to do it this way than it is to do it with dual rates. And of course, you can also do this for your throttle channel if you want to slow the car down. So if you're running this on 4S and it's too fast for, you know, a young child to handle, your son, your daughter, whatever, and you want to turn down the top speed, you can actually do this for the throttle channel as well. So let's get into it. First thing we're going to do, of course, is turn our radio on. And as before, we need to get into the menu here. So we're going to press and hold those two buttons. We're going to scroll down to EPA, and there it is. So left is at 100% and right is at 100%. And you can see your throttle channel there is also at 100 for both forward and reverse. This, of course, you can also adjust the reverse speed. So if the car's going too quick in reverse, you can turn that down through here as well. So the next thing we need to do is, of course, turn our car on. And now we're going to see just how much more steering the car has than it needs to have. So the way we do this is just very slowly. We're going to turn our wheels, and you'll see that the wheels will stop turning about there. but I still have a little bit of movement on my wheel here, and you'll see the servo is trying to turn, trying to push, and the only reason why it's even moving still is because the servo saver is doing its job. So there's a little bit of flex there in the servo saver, and we don't really need that much steering, because if I keep driving the car like this, chances are I'm going to be straining out that servo over time, and it may actually fail prematurely. So we want to set the end point. We want to tell the servo where to stop turning at the same time that the wheels stop turning. So what we're going to do here is we've got our left side selected, so we're going to slowly, well, there's two ways of doing it really. You can either have this locked and then slowly turn that down, or you can turn it down first, lock your wheels, and then slowly turn it up. I like to do it that way because I don't really like to hold the servo straining like that for too long. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to hit enter, and that will actually start flashing. And now I'm going to turn that down. So we're going to go down to probably about, I don't know, maybe 50%, somewhere around there. And then we'll work our way up. So we were at 48. And now what we'll do is I'll turn the wheels all the way to the left. So I'll hold that locked, and I'll slowly turn this up, and you'll see the wheels will keep turning. So they keep moving until I see that they're about there. It looks like they stop moving around about 70%. So as I turn my wheel, so my wheel has locked. I'm not straining the servo. It's probably got a tiny little bit of movement, extra movement there before the wheels turn. Now you can adjust this to your liking. You don't have to have maximum steering here. You can have less if you want to. If you got a really twitchy car, you might need to turn this down permanently. So I'm actually going to turn it down to probably like, I don't know, 67. That feels about right. So 67 for the left feels pretty good. And now I'm going to do the same thing to the right. So what I'll do is I'll exit out of this, and I'll scroll across to the right, hit enter, and then push that down and get down to 50. Now, every radio is going to have this done a little bit differently. So we're down to about 59% there, so that sounds about right. So let's lock all the way to the right, and we're going to slowly turn that up. And that looks like that's about it there as well. So there we go. So I'm not straining my servo. The servo has stopped turning at the same time that the wheels stop turning, and that my steering wheel here locks. So that kind of makes sense to me. So 67 for both ends actually. Look at that. So it actually, sometimes those numbers aren't exactly the same, depending on the position of the servo horn and whatnot. So don't be surprised if yours is not exactly the same, both left and right. So now we've got that done, we can turn the car off, and that is pretty much it. So that's how I do my initial setup. All I do is calibrate, set up my endpoints, make sure that my receiver and my wires are all tidied up, make sure that when I put my cover back on, I'm not pinching wires. That's also crucial, especially the receiver antenna, because if that gets cut or damaged, well, then your range is going to be severely compromised. And now I can unplug my batteries and pack everything away, and we're pretty much done. So that is it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you got something out of it, if you learned something today, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It really does help me out a lot. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and as always, check out the video description. I'll have links in there to other RC pit stop videos, and of course to all my social media pages that you can follow me on. Thank you all very much for watching once again, and I'll be speaking to you all next time.